Welcome back, Budget Bakers. I have a special for you today. Happy Thanksgiving. Today, I'm going to share with you how I make my Thanksgiving feast from start to finish. And we're going to start with the turkey. I always do a boneless turkey breast in the crock pot. It is absolutely delicious and tender, and my family always loves it. So let's get started preparing that turkey breast. I'll show you exactly what I do. Here we go, friends. I just removed my turkey breast from the packaging, and I'm adding some olive oil to both sides. The turkey breast is still frozen, but I did soak it in some warm water so that it would easily come out of the package. After I get it all coated with olive oil, I am going to add a spice mix, which I've added salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, parsley, and oregano. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sift that over the turkey breast, rub it in a little bit, do the same to the other side, making sure that I use all of it because we do not want this turkey breast lacking in flavor in any way, shape, or form. There we go. The turkey breast is coated now. Time to put it into the crock pot, which I have preheated on high, set it for high for 6 hours. I've always learned that it's best to start the crock pot on high. This way it comes to temperature, and then you turn it down to low if you need to use the low setting. So the turkey breast is inside the crock pot. I am adding vegetable stock. You can add chicken stock if you like, but this is what I had. So I'm adding 3/4 of this box of vegetable stock to the turkey breast. I will now turn my crock pot down to low and cook it for 6+ hours on low. And that will create delicious, tender turkey breast. Let's roll right into making our stuffing. I use the Pepperidge Farm stuffing. Usually I use the type that's already crumbled, but all the store had was the cubed. So what I did was I took it and I put it in that Ziploc bag that you see right there, and I smashed it with a rolling pin so that it wasn't so cubed. I am adding 1 full stick of salted butter to my pan. I was going to add in my veggies, but then I realized that I needed to swirl the butter around a little bit so it would melt a little bit more before adding the veggies. I do add a touch of salt before adding the veggies, and then I add in celery and carrot. You can also add onion if you like, just as much as you like to taste. You're going to allow those veggies to cook in the salted butter until they get soft, and then you're going to proceed with the recipe. But before I do that, I add a little extra spices. I add some more salt, some pepper, and some parsley to the mix. Once our veggies are done, I'm going to add a bit of veggie stock to the mix. I am just going to add what was left in the container after I removed the lid, and which was about 1/4 of a container. I'm going to add that right into the melted butter and the veggies. Time to add the stuffing. I'm adding the whole pack in there. Once I get it in there, I'm going to stir it around really good and get it kind of moist from the liquid that's in the pot. It's not going to be enough, so you're going to have to add more stock to the mix. What you want to do is you just want to add enough stock so that the mix is on the moist side but not liquid. Just add a little bit at a time while you're stirring until you get to the perfect consistency. As you can see, the stuffing is now soft and pliable and movable and very hot, but it is no longer dry. I always recommend tasting as you go. I am going to add a touch more salt, a little bit of pepper, and some more parsley to my stuffing. Give it a quick stir to incorporate all the spices, and now I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of salted butter. I'm going to mix it in, and it's going to melt, and it's going to make this taste absolutely, positively delicious. I am an advocate for tasting while you cook. Let's see what I think about the stuffing. Next up, another delicious side. I am going to, or I'm attempting to make, green bean casserole. I do prefer the French cut green beans when they come out of the can. Next up, we're going to add some spices to spice it up a little bit. We're going to start with salt, add some cracked pepper. Here we go with some onion powder. You can also use those little dehydrated onions if you like those. And a touch of parsley for good measure. Give it a good stir, mix it all together really good before we add more ingredients. Now I am going to add some condensed soup. I like to use cream of celery only because I don't like mushrooms. If you like cream of mushroom, use cream of mushroom. You could also use cream of chicken. Like I said, I just go with the cream of celery because it's my flavor preference. But you can choose whichever one that you like and that your family will like. I wound up using 3/4 of the can. I am going to post the recipes for all of these delicious dishes in the description. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of grated cheese. Yes, that said Mexican cheese. I had other cheese like cheddar, but couldn't find it. Not quite sure what happened to that. So I used what I had, and you can too. Little bit more salt, little bit more cracked pepper. Now we're going to give it a good mix. Now, crispy onions. Are they not absolutely delicious? So what I like to do is I like to add the crispy onions not only to the top of the casserole, but I like to mix some into the casserole and then add some to the top. I wound up using about 3/4 of the bag. Really, you can add more if you want more, or you can add less if you want less. You don't have to put them inside the casserole if you don't want to. This is just how I like to make it. As you can see, I have approximately 1/4 of a bag left at the end. Who loves sweet potatoes? Here we go. This is one of the most delicious sweet potato casseroles I have ever had. And to be honest with you, you could probably serve it as a dessert. But do I? No, I serve it with the meal. So, as always, I will list the recipe in the description, but I'll just go through real quick and tell you what I'm doing here. So, I had 2 cans of sweet potatoes. You can definitely boil your own sweet potatoes if you don't want to use canned. I added some white sugar to the mix, and now as you can see, I'm going to crack an egg and add an egg into the mixture. Next up, I'm going to add just a touch of the melted butter into the pan and then the rest into the sweet potato mixture itself. It was a little bit too hard for me to spread, so I just took a clean paper towel and I used that to spread the butter across the bottom of my baking dish. All right, let's give it a good stir. Get the egg and the butter and the sugar all incorporated into the sweet potatoes. But you are not going to believe what is coming up next. Maybe not next, but we've got evaporated milk. It's what comes after the milk that makes it absolutely delicious. Get ready for it. Here it comes. Sweetened coconut. Yes, we are adding sweetened coconut right into the sweet potato mixture. Hold on to your seats, there's more. Now we're adding mini marshmallows to the mix. It's just not a sweet potato casserole if you don't add a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of nutmeg to the mixture as well. Once everything has been added and mixed to perfection, we add it into our casserole dish, spread it out nice and even. Now it's time for our topping. And just when you think it's sweet enough, I go and add a sweet topping. So this topping typically calls for cornflakes. This time I chose to use Frosted Flakes. Why, you may ask? Well, really there's two reasons for this. First of all, the Frosted Flakes are sweeter, and I could purchase 2 little individual containers of Frosted Flakes as opposed to a huge box of cornflakes that I would have probably left over until next Thanksgiving. So what I did is I put the cornflakes in a bowl and then I crushed them with a pastry cutter. The topping also requires some melted butter, so here I am getting that melted in the microwave. Next up, some brown sugar into the mix. Then lastly, I'm going to add the melted butter into the mix. Now, if you're a fan of pecans, even walnuts, you can add nuts to this recipe. I like nuts, but I don't like them in my food, so I always leave them off of my sweet potato casserole. All right, as soon as everything looks wet, everything is mixed together, we are going to evenly add this onto the top of our casserole prior to baking. Here we have our finished casserole ready for the oven. For an extra treat, I decided to make a pumpkin chocolate chip bread. Who loves cranberry sauce? I do. I love homemade whole cranberry sauce, which is what I'm making right here. I used frozen cranberries and then I added some sugar. I then added a little bit of orange juice and I did use a touch of cinnamon as well. After adding the cinnamon, you just let it cook and allow the cranberries to pop and create a nice liquid, and you just keep stirring occasionally as you go. You definitely don't want the cranberries to stick to the bottom of the pan and burn, so you do want to continually stir them as they cook. Here I'm adding just a touch more sugar to the mix. You know, cranberries are pretty tart, so you have to add a decent amount of sugar in order to get it on the sweeter side. My cranberry sauce has cooked and is complete, and now I'm adding it into a glass bowl because it's still hot. I am always very cautious about adding anything hot to a plastic bowl. You guys know that I do not like to waste, so I am making sure that I clean my pan and get every last drop into my glass bowl. And now here's an up close and personal look with homemade cranberry sauce. Butterswim biscuit time! Yes, I actually have a video that I've made making these for you guys from start to finish. Here's a quick view. First, we are going to add our flour into a bowl. Now I'm adding, I think that was baking soda. Could have been baking powder. Check out the recipe in the description. Now just a touch of sugar is being added to the mix. And some salt. Now I am mixing it all together with, yes, a spoon. You see that correctly. It's what I had nearby.
I am now creating my own buttermilk by taking milk and adding some lemon juice, and then I will add it into the dry mix. There's actually going to be 2 cups of the buttermilk being added into the mix, and then I will mix it all together. All right, everything is mixed and well combined. Now I am going to add that mixture into an 8x8 baking dish, which has a stick of melted butter already in the bottom. You just want to make sure that you get it evenly distributed. And then I just take my spatula and I kind of separate the dough into 9 little squares prior to baking. Here's an up close and personal look at our Butterswim biscuits before they go into the oven to bake. All right, friends, it is gravy time. I start by melting some butter in a pan and adding a touch of cracked pepper. We are now going to allow this to melt and then create what is called a roux. Here we go, adding a touch of flour to the mixture and mixing it all together really well. This will create our roux, which will make our gravy thick. All right, you got to get that mixed up really well before adding your liquid. Now I am adding my vegetable stock. You can use vegetable stock, chicken stock, whatever it is that you like. You pour it in slowly as you whisk, and you can see the color is starting to brown and look absolutely delicious. Now I like to go back, have a taste, add some more salt, any spices that are necessary to get it to taste exactly how I want. And there we have it. We have a completed gravy. Delicious. You will be a pro at making roux at the end of this dinner. We are now creating another roux for our mac and cheese. It starts out the exact same way as the gravy with butter and spices. And then we add in our flour a little at a time as we're stirring. And as you can see, it starts to brown and thicken. Now we are adding milk as opposed to stock to create our cheesy mixture for our mac and cheese. You can see it start to thicken really nicely here. Now we are adding our cheeses to the mixture and we are going to whisk that together until it's all melty, creamy, and delicious. I do take it off the heat though because I don't want it to burn. As you can see, I am now pouring it into my cooked pasta and then we will stir it together and have a taste. Look at that delicious mac and cheese, friends. I was at the market and found some green tomatoes. So here I am preparing to fry up some green tomatoes to have with our Thanksgiving dinner. I dredge them in egg and then in seasoned breadcrumbs and then fry them up to perfection in my pan. There you have it, crispy brown goodness. Right, our Thanksgiving dinner is ready to eat. We've got the homemade gravy, the fried green tomatoes, our shredded turkey, homemade cranberry sauce, green bean casserole, sweet potato casserole, homemade mac and cheese, stuffing, the most delicious stuffing, and Butterswim biscuits. Everything is ready to eat. Thank you, friends, for being here. Here's to a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.